All right, church, we are, this Sunday, I would just call it, this message, title it this: Jesus, heal me. Jesus, heal me. Man, I can't think of a better title for just to show up at church on a weekend and be a part of a service and like, well, what's church about today? I think it's about an encounter with Jesus, and we're asking Jesus to do healing work. Here's the good news. That's exactly what he does. We've been on this journey for the last 5 weeks where we've been in a teaching series on parenting. And I think one of the kind of sub-themes is that there's healing work that God does in our lives regardless of what age we are. Regardless of what our family situation is like, God's doing healing work in our lives. And so we are walking into a new series here in a couple weeks called Clickbait. It's going to be an incredible series. But in this time in between, I feel like it's always great to kind of stop and like, let's just go to the Gospels and let's spend a Sunday as a church with Jesus. Let's spend a moment in the ministry of Jesus. Let's see what Jesus did and what Jesus was about. So in Mark chapter 1, we get a first in the ministry of Jesus. The first time that something happens, I want you to hear it yourself. It starts in verse 38 of Mark chapter 1. Jesus replied, "Let us go somewhere else to nearby villages so I can preach there also. That is why I have come." So he traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out demons. A man with leprosy came to him and begged him on his knees, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." Jesus was indignant. He reached out his hand and he touched the man. "I am willing," he said. "Be clean." Incredible encounter. There's a couple of things that maybe a little antenna, a little red flag went up in your mind when you read that. Well, first thing that probably hit me is that Jesus, the description in the NIV translation here is that Jesus was indignant. Maybe that's not an attitude that you would put with Jesus when he's around people. And of all the preachers in America, I've got a very unique situation that I'm in the one community in America that has the largest population of people who speak Greek outside of Greece. So what I'm not going to do is like try to butcher a Greek word for you today, okay? Because I will get waylaid in the lobby with people who actually can speak it right, okay? But what I want to let you know is that word, there's a couple of ideas behind that. One is that Jesus had this indignant attitude about the man saying, "Are you willing?" Because Jesus, if anything, is underscored in his life. His entire life is showing that he's willing and ready, and he's standing at the ready, and he's begging people to ask him. The other thing is this is new in the ministry of Jesus. This is Mark chapter 1. This is the very beginning of the ministry of Jesus when he's just making his home in this little town called Capernaum, which is one of the fishing villages around the Sea of Galilee, which is not a big place. And he's going synagogue to synagogue, and people, they don't fully understand his kingdom. And he's starting a preaching ministry. And he's saying, "This is what my kingdom's like. This is what my kingdom's like." And here's what he's coming face to face with the forces of evil. Remember that God turned over this earth, everything that was, to the dominion of Satan. It was technically his territory, and Jesus coming to earth was an invasion of that territory. And what he met face to face was the kingdom of Satan, and part of this indignant attitude was the mindset of the kingdom, the pervasive kingdom of evil that's like holding people hostage, brokenness, repression, holding people down. The great healing that did happen, I think that there's this attitude of Jesus where he's like, "This is the thing I've come to fight, not this man." I actually use the ESV version more than any other version, and I think it's actually a better translation. It says that Jesus is moved with pity when he says, "I'm willing." Other translations say that Jesus in this moment is moved to compassion in this moment when he sees this man. I think Jesus is capable of all of those things in a moment on his face where he's fighting evil. He's fighting the life that this poor guy has lived with leprosy. It says clearly in the text that he'd been going throughout all of Galilee, preaching in synagogues and driving out demons. All of this is going through the mind of Jesus, but it's the very first time that something very specific happens in Scripture. It's the first time ever that someone comes to Jesus and says these words, Jesus, heal me. Jesus, would you heal me? I have to pose that exact question to you today. Is there some place in your life, I mean, I know everyone that's here has absolutely no problems and things are going smoking awesome hot, great, right? But just imagine if you had a problem. Just go there with me for a minute. Just imagine if you had an issue and you're like, Jesus, could you heal this situation? Jesus, could you fix this? Jesus, can you make this complete, make it whole again? This guy is the first person to ever come to Jesus and say, would you do this? Would you make things better? And it's not just that the man asked that. He says, I know you can do it. It's if you're willing. Of course, Jesus is willing. He says so, and then he says, be clean. Verse 42, it picks up in Mark chapter 1. Immediately the leprosy left him, and he was cleansed. And Jesus sent him away at once with a strong warning. See that you don't tell this to anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the sacrifices that Moses commanded for your cleansing as a testimony to them. Instead, he went out and began to talk freely, spreading the news. As a result, Jesus could no longer enter into a town openly, but stayed outside in lonely places. Yet the people still came to him from everywhere. Jesus, heal me, this guy shows up and says. First time ever it's happened in Scripture. There's some things about a Jesus healing that I think you need to know. One is this: a Jesus healing is better than a simple curing. There's a difference between a Jesus healing moment and just a simple, you're cured. This profound insight, and it's right here in this text. If you really look at this encounter between Jesus and this guy, there's a big difference between Jesus healing a part of your life and just getting a quick fix or a cure in an area. See, Jesus sent him away with this very strong warning. Jesus sent him with exact instructions. Jesus sent him with a roadmap for his new situation of being cleansed from leprosy. And here's why. Same for this guy, same for you. Jesus doesn't want to just put a salve over a problem that you have or kick a can down the road or just put a Band-Aid on something for a moment. Here's what Jesus wants in your life. He wants total, restorative healing. He wants a healing that is so deep that it impacts you, the total person of who you are. And that's why Jesus does this. He sends him away with exact instructions, a strong warning. Jesus told this guy, don't tell anyone. Go and present yourself to the ruler of the community. This is a Jewish community. The person who's in charge of that Jewish community would have been the rabbi. That's who's in charge of keeping the community, get this, clean. See, the man's leprosy is immediately gone. And what he does is he immediately disobeys Jesus, and he just goes out telling people, I no longer have leprosy. Isn't this great? But think about the complexity of your life and put it on top of this guy, because his life's probably like yours. There's a good chance that this guy had a spouse. There's a good chance that he maybe had children. He probably had a former employer. So there were coworkers at work that knew him. He probably grew up in this region, and so he had friends that maybe had moved to the other side of the lake, and they knew him, and he had some cousins and people that he had just always seen in town, and he was known, and he knew people. And what God wanted to do, what Jesus wanted to do in this moment, was not just take his leprosy away from him, but Jesus wanted to put him back into his life. He wanted to put his life back into play. He wanted to restore all that was lost. He didn't just have a problem on his skin that made people say, yuck. He was someone that was not technically allowed to go and be at his house. He wasn't technically allowed to go out and get another job and trade and buy and sell and make a living for his family. He wasn't someone who could do anything with anyone ever. And what Jesus gave him specific instructions for was, I want you to go and get that all back. If he would have gone and presented himself to the priest, he specifically said, offer the sacrifices that Moses commanded you for your cleansing as a testimony to them. What he would have gotten was a full healing and not just a cure from leprosy. Leprosy was something that had hurt him, but what had been hurt because of leprosy was every relationship as an entire life. I think that this is something that we miss at times when we go to Jesus and say, Jesus, heal me. And he's like, I would love to do that, but I'm going to need you to go back and have restoration in every area of your life. We say, okay, heal me later. Maybe I don't have time for a total healing. Could I get a partial healing? Could I just get what's an 8th healing cost, right? And Jesus wants to do a total healing, and it's better than a curing. You see, you could have your debts paid off but still be addicted to gambling. You could get invited to a party and still stand in that room full of a lot of people and feel like the loneliest person in the world. Jesus wants to do a total healing and not just cure one problem. You could get A's and finally get into the school that mom and dad wanted you to get into, and you still might not hear, I'm proud of you. You can get clean and technically be sober or off the thing or not getting a fix today, but the whole family could still be in a place where they're living in fear of when the shoe is going to drop and they're going to be put back into those circumstances again. See, what Jesus wants to do is not just a cure. He wants total healing in your life. I don't think it's a mistake that what Jesus calls this man back to is back towards biblical community. He says, first, before you tell anyone about this good news, go back to the place where biblical community happens. Go back to that local place of religious thought and teaching. Go back to the synagogue. Go back to church. I think it's possible for you to have an adoration for the person of Jesus and still break his heart at the same time. I mean, just think about that. It's possible for you to be so excited about who Jesus is and be like, I love Jesus, and in that, you're still hurting him. It's possible for Jesus, get that, it's possible for Jesus to be very hurt by your actions, even though you would say, I'm fully in love with Jesus. I explain it to the boys this way. They think it's morbid, and I say all the time, what if I was just gone? They're like, oh, we know, Dad, we would all of a sudden like country music. I'm like, no, I'm not talking about that, guys. You will when I'm gone like country music. I prophesied it. But I do this little game with them where I say, what if I was just gone from your life for 10 or 20 years and then I miraculously just kind of show back up and you get to walk me around your life? You're 9 now, but what about when you're 20? Or you're 20 now, what about when you're 30 or 40 and I'm gone and then I come back in 10 or 20 years and we walk around together and you walk me through your life and I get the feel of your life, the ebb and flow, the day in and day out. What would I see? I say, guys, imagine if you tell me, oh, Dad, all kinds of good things. Matter of fact, when we get in the car, we got a special radio station we play where it only reminds us of great moments we had with you. All the crazy, we play that radio station and that we know this, we kind of sing songs. So I'm like, okay, that's great. Dad, when we get up every morning, it's a little bit weird, but we get up and we can't talk to you for 20 years, but we wrote some letters to you. We're like, well, okay, that's great. I appreciate it. Well, Dad, every year for your birthday and upon the anniversary of your death, we kind of throw a big party. We get a bunch of people together and we remember you and we never miss. I would say, but hey, that's okay. But hey, guys, where's your mom? Where's your mom? Oh, well, she comes to the thing we do. When we do every time we do the big once a year party, mom comes. I'm like, hey guys, I've been gone for 20 years, but Mom, she eats way healthier than me, okay? She's here. Like, where's she at? Like, every day. Where's she at in your life? This is the exact reason that Jesus says this. He says, I am a groom. And the most precious thing to a groom is the bride. And he says, I'm coming for a bride because he wants to be with a bride. God comes for us. He describes the church as this bride. And if I showed up after 20 years and the only thing that they did was say, well, Dad, we adored you and we thought about you all the time, I'd be like, who cares if you didn't take care of my wife? If your mother wasn't in your life. And this is the exact example that Jesus brings to us when he puts himself in the scenario of he is the bride and everything he cares about is biblical community. It's called the church. Biblical community is the church, and the place that Jesus drives this guy back to is biblical community. And we don't always get the healing we want because we want a magic moment with Jesus, but we want nothing to do with the transformative power and the sanctification that happens in being a part of the church. I can imagine showing up after 20 years and not seeing my bride daily involved in doing life with my kids. And I'm just there on a Monday and like, what are we doing? Well, on Mondays we go here and we meet with so-and-so and they do this, and they started coming and being around it because their brother, and you start to see the expansive tentacles of life on life in the relationship of the church, which has changed people, changing people, because healing is better than a curing. And a healing isn't just about you. A healing isn't just about you. John chapter 9, Jesus heals a blind man. I've actually got a picture that I think is the most incredible picture of this moment. I love this picture. There's light on this guy's face who's a blind man, and it's really focused on, it's the moment where Jesus is about to heal this blind man, and you see the light of Jesus kind of on this guy, and he's afraid and he's confused and he's hopeful. It happens in John chapter 9. He went along and he saw a blind man who was blind from birth. His disciples asked him the question that is the question. Here it is, verse 2. This is our question too. Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Why'd this happen? This guy's in trouble. Why is he in trouble? Somebody somewhere did something bad, and they're to blame. It was either him or his parents. Here's what Jesus says. Then, he says it now. Neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. Man. Why is this like this? Why did I get cancer? Why do I have problems? Why won't you come and heal me? Why is there hardship? Why is there trouble? Here's the words of Jesus himself. Hey, this isn't because of some great sin in your life. This happened so that other people would see the power of God move through you. The power of God move through you in such a way that people would set up and be like, man, I got to have some of that peace, some of that joy. I got to have some of that power in my life. Because if that happened to me, I would be a wreck. And that person, in their hardship, they're blessing me, and I can't explain it. The power of God. It's the power of God in a person. And Jesus says this to his disciples who are like, why do bad things happen to good people? And Jesus says it has nothing to do with them. It's so that my glory can be shown through them. And straight talk. There are people in this room. There's someone watching online right now, and you've got something happening to you, and it could take your life. And it's going to be awkward if you show up to heaven mad. Welcome to heaven. We're glad you're here. Well, I'm angry about what just happened down there. Did you want 20 more years down there? I mean, we got carnival rides and cotton candy, and it's not even bad for you up here. What are you mad for, man? This perspective shift is the thing that gives peace and joy. But that's what the world doesn't understand, because they say, if I had that diagnosis, I would be mad. Well, yeah, but you don't have the peace of Jesus reigning in your heart to understand that this isn't because of something I did. It's so that God can see the power working in me of his Holy Spirit. Jesus. A healing is better than a curing, and a Jesus healing isn't just about you. I'm going to skip to the end. I love this story in John chapter 9 because it's just this one real guy and it goes back and forth. 2 stories today. Mark chapter 1 is a guy who gets healed. I wanted to jump to John chapter 9 with this guy who's blind. They bring him in front of, Jesus heals the guy. The way he does it, it's a little weird. Jesus spits into the ground and kind of makes a mud soup and puts it on the guy's eyes. Literally, and then Jesus sends him to the pool of Siloam and tells him to wash there. The pool means sent. And he's healed. That's what happens. And there's a lot of confusion over this guy and his healing. I think what this guy does is he preaches a sermon. I would say it's the final point that my heart needs to hear today. Maybe your heart needs to hear it today. Here's what it says in verse 24. For the second time, they called the man who had been blind. This is the leaders of the synagogues. They called him. They said to him, hey, give glory to God. We know that man is a sinner. They're speaking of Jesus. The previously blind man answered, whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see. They said to him, well, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered them, I've told you already, and you would not listen. Do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? I think that's a really funny line. It's like, you keep asking, are you interested? Right? You want in? Verse 28, they did not like it. Here's what they reviled him, saying, you are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. Moses is the greatest prophet of the Old Testament. Moses, hands down. Jesus comes as the greatest prophet of all time because Moses tried to uphold the law and he couldn't. Jesus upheld the law and made it so that you can too. So they're like, hey, we follow Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but for this man, we don't even know where he comes from. The man answered, well, that's an amazing thing. I think he was kind of saying that's a funny thing. This is an amazing thing. You don't know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. And we know that God does not listen to sinners. But if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. They answered him, you were born in utter sin, and you would teach us? And they cast him out. I think this is the heart of this healing moment with Jesus. And if you come to a house of worship on a weekend and the premise is put out there, are you ready to have a healing moment with Jesus? Do you want to be healed? Or do you have the courage to say, Jesus, heal me? Well, look at this story, pull some things from it. I think what we see right here, the bottom line crux of this story here is that a Jesus healing is really only for the humble. I want a Jesus healing. You have to be humble. You've got to be humble to have a Jesus healing. These men, they hear what's going on and they're like, well, we don't even know where this guy comes from. I love his answer. He's like, isn't that strange that someone comes and you don't know where they come from, but he does miracles and you won't attribute those miracles to the fact that he is actually who he says he is. And Jesus claimed one thing very clearly, to be the Son of God. To be the only way to connect to the Father. He says, I'm the way, I'm the truth, and the life. And there's no way to the Father but through me. And do you know what they looked and they said, no, we're only going to follow Moses. And they kicked him out. Here, dear friend, you want a healing moment with Jesus? Here's the pathway to a healing moment with Jesus. Humility. Humility. Hey, young man, you're trying to lead your family. You want to lead your family well? Humility. Hey, you want to grow in the workplace and you want to ascend in your job? Humility. You want a relationship with God the Father? It's going to take humbling yourself before his son Jesus and saying these simple words. I want a healing moment. It takes humility to say that. Because what we say with our lives a lot of time is what these guys say. I don't need anything from you. I think these leaders listening to this proof of who Jesus was, I think it's even stronger today. I love what he says in verse 32 where he says, never before in the history Never since the world has began has it been heard that anyone has opened the eyes of a man who's been born blind. Anything that Jesus has done before, he can do again. There are miracles that still happen today. There's only ever been one person who came and did the amount of miracles Jesus did. There's only ever been one person on the planet who ever came and lived a perfect life, never sinned, never, ever, ever, ever sinned, and said these words, I'm the only way to heaven, and I come from the Father, and I come to forgive all sins. Do you believe in me? It is only Jesus. I've got to read you the end of this. Verse 35, Jesus heard that they had cast this guy out. I love this. I mean, just think about the town. Jesus hears the news, right? He heard that he had cast him out. And Jesus went and found him, and he said this, do you believe in the Son of Man? Do you believe? Do you believe in the Son of God? He answered, and who is he, sir, that I may believe in him? And Jesus said to him, you have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you. And he said, Lord, I believe. And he worshiped him. And Jesus said, for judgment I have come into this world, for that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind. Some of the Pharisees near him heard these things, and he said to them, oh, are we also blind? And Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you would have no guilt. But now that you say, we see, your guilt remains. Did you get it? If you're living this life and you're like, I see everything. I see my problems. I've got it figured out. I've got it. If you're saying that, the words of Jesus, then you're blind. The way to regain your sight is to come and say this, I'm blind, and Jesus, I need you to help me see the things I cannot see. There are things deep in your heart that he can heal. There are things that you can't even articulate with words that are broken from decades or months or this week or it's coming next week, and you don't have the toolkit to do the surgery it's going to take to restore the brokenness of this world and relationships that have happened to you. And if you say with haughty eyes, I've got it, I see it, Jesus said this, then I've come that you're just going to continue in blindness. It is only the person that says, I recognize I'm blind, and I recognize that only Jesus can help me see. There's this picture of this guy. Love this photo. It's not old. It's actually